Well. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a great show planned for you. As you know, we've changed the format a little bit. We're doing news Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and on Tuesday and Thursday, we're having special guest interviews. And we have a great interview planned for you today. We're going to get started right there. Just a lot of people have been checking in with me and saying, hey, we saw there was a lot of rain in San Diego. How did you fare? We dodged a bullet. I kid you not. We had about 2 inches of rain where I am, but just a few miles south is where the heavier rain fell. So we dodged a bullet there, and everything's okay. I was able to make it home last night. I know they were closing roads and stuff, but by the time I left, had settled down enough that I was able to make it home without a challenge. So I'm here. I'm showered. I'm ready to go. We're going to have a lot of fun. My name's Robert Imbrielli, and you are watching SBG News. And I just want to tell you real quickly, if you haven't done so already, go over to screwbiggov.com, find out more about what Lewis is up to. And you can find swag there. In that bottom right-hand corner is also his social media links. It's hard to find ScrewBigGov on social media. If you go there, you will find it a lot easier. All right. Well, you see stories coming up now more and more about 2020. And I remember 107 said, 2020, it ain't over yet. Boy, is that the truth. And more keeps coming out every single day. So my guest today is Patrick Colbeck. He's an American engineer, author, and politician. He is a former Republican member of the Michigan Senate, having represented a northwestern portion of Wayne County from 2011 to 2019. In November of 2020, Patrick was a certified poll challenger at the TCF Center in Detroit. Remember, that was in the news a little bit in 2020, TCF, remember? He later appeared at the 2020 Wayne County Board of Canvassers and Michigan State Board of Canvassers certification meeting. Interference, oh my. Patrick, welcome.
Hey, it's great to be with you, Robert.
It's good to see you. I mean, we've had a chance to talk, and I knew I wanted to get back in and bring you back on and have a longer conversation, and we're going to be able to do that today. So, whew. Let's dig in. Let's get right into the meat here of what's going on.
That sounds good. Well, first of all, you're talking about what 2024 has to offer for us. I still remember back in 2020 when we were turning the clock over to 2021. One of my favorite memes that I saw was, before I agree to 2021, I'd like to see terms and conditions after that 2020 year. And I think we're kind of in that mode from the switch over from 2023 to 2024.
Oh, we are. Yep. Yeah, no question. And, a lot of people are here in 2024 and they're going, hey, I'm not ready for this yet. And one of the comments that I hear more often than anything is, boy, what a year 24 has been. I'm like, we're only in week 3.
I know. It's going to be keep your hands and feet in the ride at all times.
Yep. So there's some stories in Gateway Pundit about the FBI and about them obstructing, our ability literally to talk about, well, number one, mail-in ballots, and number two, talk about the machines. And you've been digging into this because I think it's really important that, I think everyone watching this show pretty much knows, hey, 2020, it wasn't at all what they were saying, right? We know it was stolen. And I guess the frustration, Patrick, more than anything is that more and more we have the receipts, we have the information, and at the end of the day, who's listening?
I know there used to be a time when I was really excited when organizations like the FBI announced that they were going to perform an investigation warrant, which says, hey, show me proof that you actually deserve to be the person that was elected. And the bad guys know this. And so they've been delaying FOIA request responses.
Exactly. Yep, we've been seeing that.
It took me 9 months to get a list of the people who voted in the state of Michigan, and by statute, that's supposed to be uploaded to our state qualified voter file within 7 days of the election. Yep. So that's the kind of game that they're playing. The good news is through efforts of folks like Mike, and you can find out more about what we're doing there at lindellplan.com, but we think we've got a much more responsive network of individuals where we kind of know what their playbook is. I know Sydney says it's all over the map. I agree with her, but you know what? I think we figured out all the different plays in their playbook, and we're ready for them this time.
Tell me about Mike Lindell, because he was going to monitor the elections wirelessly to see whether or not the machines were connected to the internet, and that got slapped down by a lawsuit, didn't it? Or did it not?
No. Okay. No. That hasn't been touched by a lawsuit. Okay. There are states that are trying to prohibit that monitoring of the election, which begs the question, why is that happening? I mean,
Well, if you're
literally,
not
they called an
connected to the
emergency
internet, there's no
session.
monitoring doesn't matter. You're not going to find anything. I
Absolutely.
mean,
Well, now they're not even hiding it anymore.
yeah.
I mean, once again, back in my home state of Michigan, I mean, the same people who deny that these machines are connected to the internet for the longest time, if you go up to the Michigan Bureau of Elections website, they'll actually have a bulletin out to all the elected officials, all election officials saying, hey, if you're having issues connecting your poll books and other equipment to the internet, here's a guide, go to Connected Nation and they'll help you out. That's how
Well,
brazen they
yeah,
are.
and we saw it too, even in 2020, because anytime they had tech support requests, they logged in remotely. The only way
Right.
you can do that's got to be connected to the internet, you know?
No, or some very smart carrier pigeons.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Oh boy. So let's talk about the Holderman Report. This is a report that they've been wanting to keep under wraps. They did not want this thing to come out, and eventually it came
Yeah.
out. But all the hype kind of was gone from it because it was the big deal, and then it was hidden. And I don't know. Did we finally get the full report, or did we get like pieces of it? Do you know?
There are people with the full report, and
Yeah.
frankly, the stuff that has been released is damning enough. I mean, and the
Hmm.
focus has been on ballot marking devices, and there's a lawsuit, Donna Curling versus Brad Raffensperger out in Georgia, that highlighted in testimony, expert testimony by a professor from my alma mater, University of Michigan. His name is J. Alex Halderman. And the guy's brilliant when it comes to understanding how election systems work and how they can be subverted. And during a recent court trial or court hearing, Halderman actually demonstrated how easy it is to hack what's called a Dominion ICX. That's one of the ballot marking device
Hmm.
systems that were suspect with all these vulnerabilities we were talking about. He showed that with a pen, just he went over to one of the attorneys on the opposing side and said, "Hey, can I have your pen for a second?" Use that pen to go off and push the reset button on the machine. And when he pushed that down, it went into safe mode. And when it was in safe mode, he was able to go off and access all the files that he needed to go off and change the election results.
Wow.
So that was how easy it was to do with just one machine type on it. And I would submit that all these machines, frankly, if you look at their contracts and their technical manuals in states all across the country, what you'll find is that these machines are designed to be connected to the internet.
Yep.
And when that happens, you've got a whole chain of custody issue that they don't want to be
Well, they
talking
have
about. And
multiple modems in it. They have cellular modems and regular Wi-Fi modems. And it's just like,
yeah,
oh, these machines don't have them, but they have both. You know what I mean? It's just, come on.
they denied access. They denied that these things had modems. And in Michigan during the Antrim County lawsuit, one of the clerks in a nearby county around Antrim allowed inspection of their machines, which were not Dominion. They were ES&S machines. And they popped the hood on a DS200. And when they popped the hood on that, we had some cyber forensic experts that were
Hmm.
looking at this, and they looked at the motherboard and they found out that the motherboard had a 4G wireless chipset from
Yep.
Telit Systems installed on it.
Yep.
And the clerk was clueless about that. And most clerks are going to be clueless. First
Yep.
of all,
It's very
what clerk
technical.
do you
Yeah.
know that is going to open up or pop open the chassis on an election machine and look under the hood and look at the motherboard? And if they looked at the motherboard and how would they recognize one of these chipsets? So it's the standard marketing pitch or sales pitch for all these voting system vendors is that all of our systems are air gapped, they're not connected to the internet, and they repeat that often enough where they start believing it. And my background is I'm a certified Microsoft small business specialist. When I was at the TCS Center, I walked around to all the high-speed tabulators, these Dominion ICC machines, and the associated adjudicator workstations. Every single one of them was connected to the internet. And every time I asked an election official whether or not these machines were connected to the internet, they said, no, 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 no. I go, well, do me a favor then. Just take your little mouse, because these are all Windows-based
Yep.
devices. Take your little pointer, roll it over the bottom right-hand corner there, and there's a little icon there
Internet
that
access.
indicates that they're connected to the internet.
Yep.
And as soon as you roll over, it's going to pop up connected to internet.
Hmm. Yep.
None of them would do that. And they said, you're just going to have to trust me. Well, I've learned that my lack of trust was well-founded because these
Yep.
things were connected to the internet.
Yeah, it's really fascinating that they repeat the lie often enough and people start to believe it. And I think the challenge for the general public is, no, we're talking sort of high level stuff. We kind of understand the technology. I mean, like you, I've been in the computer world forever. I've been, I started building
Yeah.
computers back in 1980. Kind of looking at from that perspective, we understand it. We understand this. The general
Yeah.
public doesn't. And when you say it's air gapped, what does that mean? That's one of those terminologies that you and I know what it
Yeah.
means, but the general public's not going to know. And these clerks manning the polling stations, they're not going to know. And they're certainly not going to pop the machine open, like you say, to see. You know?
Yeah. Well, which kind of you're getting to the heart of, I think, what is one of our core issues, particularly going into 2024, and that is the fact that we're in an information war.
Yeah.
The clerk's in the middle of the information war. The public's in the middle of an information war. And the House, U.S. House, back in, I think it was November of last year, put out a damning report on an organization called the Election Integrity Partnership. And what they highlighted was that the federal government was actively censoring attempts to go off and get the truth out about these election systems, electronic voting systems, and using proxies like the Center for Internet Security to go off and provide a misinformation reporting portal. And they had a whole ticket management system, or they called it an incident management system, where if somebody like Colbeck speaks up and says, "Hey, these machines are connected to the internet," they'd flag that and say, "Oh, we got to come up with a rebuttal on that. We got to squelch that. We got to censor that." And their incident management system featured all the big tech companies like Facebook and Twitter at the time before it was X.
Mm-hmm.
All these guys, they were told, "Here are your marching orders. Here's the new talking points. Here's the fact checks." And then they were pushing this information out to traditional media channels as well. And so it was a big censorship out. So if you feel like you haven't got the full story, well, there is a deliberate effort to make sure you didn't get the full story about
Exactly.
what
Yeah.
happened. And they're exposed now, thanks to the folks in the U.S. House under Jim Jordan's leadership there. According to the official records in the state of Michigan. I mean, that's an election decided by 154,188 votes, if you want to believe the results.
Right.
So that's where I
But this
zeroed in on,
happened
because
state after state. There were more votes than
it
voters.
did.
Yeah.
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 So I focused in on the X's and O's and the numbers, but I'll tell you, the real story is on this information war and the censorship and the Ministry of Truth, if you will, that has been established across our country. And that's why the efforts of folks like Mike Lindell are so important. I mean, Mike, when he was being censored, he said, "Well, forget that. I'm going to go off and start up my own communications platform,
Yep.
media platform, Frank Speech," and said, "Oh, they're going to censor me on big tech. Well, I'm going to start up Frank Social." And so we haven't been idle those last 3 years. So we've been working on the tools to go around their censorship and go around their false narratives. And the WMD that you were referring to earlier was really designed specifically to address the fake news that these machines are not connected to the internet.
Yep.
And so Mike says, "Oh yeah, well, here, we'll detect whether or not they're," and make it so easy for everybody to go off and highlight it, that's going to be lie number one. If they're lying about that, everybody should be understanding what else are they lying about.
Well, he had the packet captures when he was doing the cyber symposium. He had the packet captures. He never released them during that for some reason. But then he brought
Yeah.
up to Tina Peters, who had done forensic backup of the machine prior to and after the Dominion
Yeah.
folks went in there. And you compare the two, and it's like they turned off all the security so anybody could log into that Windows machine. Anybody from anywhere could log into it.
Right. And it had two different election databases. That's kind of
Yeah.
important to note as well.
Yeah.
And so that's out there. And the PCAPs, by the way, they're not going away. This is something where Mike explained out at the Moment of Truth Summit in particular. Kurt Olson, his lawyer, talked about how there was Negroponte, who was a DNI at the time, issued a protective order against the release of the information that led to those PCAPs. And so that's part of the reason is Mike doesn't want another lawsuit for releasing that data right now. And this is getting into national security concerns. But that's the game that's being played. It's about who controls the information. And it's not an accident that the folks that kind of tried to classify Hunter Biden's laptop, remember that in October, right
Yep.
before the Chinese Communist Party, and but everybody said no, that's Russian disinformation. And the folks who said that were all the members of the intel community, 51 members of them. Amazing how quickly they rallied around that little letter saying it was Russian disinformation. That won censorship campaign around that one piece of evidence was later proven to change elections is around influence
Is
operations
media.
and this information
Yep.
war. Yeah.
Well, that's why the WEF last week said their biggest concern is misinformation. That's what their big focus is. It's like, and they want a code of ethics for all the social media companies to follow. So you can't post things that they don't agree with. Boy, that
Yeah,
would
well,
that
the
would be
organization behind, yeah, that was the federal government was behind that, and they're working through all those organizations in the election integrity partnership to change their guidelines. I mean, that's their whole one of their major thrusts is change the policy guidelines, and that's so blatantly against the First Amendment because it's restricting the free speech of citizens, and it's the actual federal government going off and doing that. That is a no-no.
Yep. Federal government can't do it directly and they can't do it through a proxy, which is what the social
Yeah,
media companies would be. The private social media company can act on their own to do it, right?
yeah,
But the,
yeah,
the
yeah,
government can't be
exactly.
directing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they flip that script out there. If there's a they're trying to make private owners do stuff that's against their conscience all the time.
Yep.
But and now I don't know, it's frustrating. They a little bit of an upside down world right now going into 2024. And it's another one of those funny memes where I saw a an alien landing his flying saucer next to a guy and said, "Take me to your leader." And the guy says, you kind of come at a bad time right now.
How true. How true.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting, Patrick, is that if we look at 2016, they attempted to steal because they had that algorithm in place, fractional voting, right? Where Hillary Clinton got 1.25 and every Trump vote got 0.75. I don't know how
Yeah.
they figured that out, but that's what they did with the fractional voting. And they had set the algorithm so Hillary would just win by just a little bit so it would be believable. And the Trump voters came out in such force that it overwhelmed it. Now, we didn't pay any attention to it. We probably should have been back then in 2016 be paying attention the way we are in 2020.
Well, I was at that time, I was serving as vice chair of the Election and Government Reform Committee in the Michigan Senate.
Hmm.
And I had known Catherine Engelbrecht for a long time. So we actually did do some deep dive into election processes in Michigan. Um, and in the wake of the 2016 election, we had Jill Stein call for a recount in Michigan. She was a Green Party candidate. And during that recount in the city of Detroit, I had one of my staffers out there, and the precinct that she was at, the poll book said that there were 306 ballots cast, but when you open up the ballot container, there's only 50 ballots.
Oh,
So obviously there are some ballots more important than others,
right.
and they got recycled. And so I said, that's when I engaged Catherine, and we did for a lack of a better term, proctology exam on the Michigan election system and go through all the process and find out where the vulnerabilities are. But this is where things get kind of dark, and you're seeing it with what's happening with President Trump right now, is that there really is a uniparty.
Yeah.
They want to be the ones controlling this, whether it's primary or general election, doesn't really matter. They want to be in control. Matter of fact, when I ran for governor in Michigan back in 2018, I actually saw my election results the night before the election. And if you go to Politico.com, I had a buddy of mine on the other side of the international date line out in Australia, and he was looking at it and said, "Hey, they got your election results up already." I thought that was kind of interesting. So this has been going on for a while, and it's just taking a time to wake up and find a way to actually monitor it and convert that monitoring, that data into action. And we're about as prepared as we can get going up. This is literally a David versus Goliath again,
Yeah,
because
it is.
there's a lot of big money folks out there. And Mike Lindell, bless his heart, he's tapped, right? He's put everything he can. I mean, one estimate was around 65 million of his own money and another 10 million in a loan here. So he's got all of his chips on the table right now, and we need more people ready to come out and stand
Yeah,
up.
I
And
tell people all the time. It's like I bought a lot of Christmas gifts from Mike's My Pillow store because it's like, you know what, we need to
yeah,
support him. He's going above and beyond. I mean, I've never seen anyone do half of
he's
what
all
he's
in.
doing. Yeah.
I just got off a meeting with him right before here. We're preparing for an event out in Vegas that hopefully will shed some more light on this as well. But there's a lot of work to be done, and he's been one of those warriors since the beginning. And there's a lot of what I call meddling kids all across the country
Yep.
that have been investing quite a bit in this as well. And so we're a little bit better prepared. I would submit probably a lot better prepared in 2024 than we were in 2020, but there's a lot of room for improvement still.
Let me future pace this just a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's say we're on election day this November. We're
Hmm.
all expecting Trump's going to win. The Trump parades everywhere, the rallies, the 50,000 person rallies, all the rest of this. And what happens if they steal it? What happens in this country?
Well, I'd like to think that we're immediately going to be able to follow evidence and take it through the appropriate actions with law enforcement and our judicial system and get it overturned right away. So there's a lot of people concerned about more dangerous options than that, but I'm in that mode where I still believe we're fundamentally in an information war, and that's where I want to focus things in on. And now, if you look at the flip side of that, and say, all right, Trump wins, what do you think the other side is going to go off and do?
Well, yeah.
And
Well, they did it for
and
4 years
so,
when he was in power. Attack, attack, attack,
well,
attack, right?
Well, this is where that millennial the Millie Weaver videos, I think were so illuminating because they were plotting the coup on November 3rd, 2020,
Hmm.
and they had tactical maps of Washington, D.C. They were running simulations as to who was going to break the glass
Wow.
and instigate people to go off and storm the Capitol. I mean, everything that we saw unfold on January 6th, they had planned back on November 3rd. So, or before November 3rd. And all that information was handed over to the FBI before the election.
Well, the FBI was
So,
complicit in January 6th. We know now that they were in there and they
yeah,
were the ones instigating a lot of this, trying to get the crowd angry. And
yep.
kudos to our side. We didn't bite. We didn't get angry. We
No,
didn't. We didn't go into that mode.
it's an old Saul Alinsky tactic. If you ever read Rules for
Hmm.
Radicals, I'm
Yeah.
sure you have. I mean, this is a case where the one of the adages of Saul Alinsky was the action is in the reaction.
Hmm.
They are always going to keep trying to poke the bear and poke the bear and poke the bear. And to the credit of a lot of the mega enthusiasts that were out at the Capitol on January 6th, they were calling people out when they were fed or they were doing something that was not in accordance with our standards of conduct. And our standards of conduct are law and order and rule of law.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
I was so proud of everybody that adhered to that and focused in on that. But they're going to keep poking this year, and it hasn't even started. This summer is going to be very interesting along those lines, and we can't let them detract us. We can't let them instigate, their Saul Alinsky tactics
Give
on
us
us.
some insight into what you might see for this summer. It's interesting because people are always kind of like, what's happening next? What's going to come next? What are some feeling? I know a lot of people are talking about financial collapse coming this March. Everyone's sort of pointing toward March as being a tipping point where things start to go in the other direction. What are you seeing?
Well, let's first of all look at the backdrop of where we're sitting with Joe Biden. 81 million votes, there's no way he got it in 2020.
Right.
So they're going to be desperate, right? And so now we're like facing a raccoon in an alley that's backed up in the back and there's nowhere else to go. What are they going to do? They're going to get their fangs out and they're going to get their claws out and they're going to do everything that they possibly can. So I've heard various scenarios, everything from cyber attacks to what we're seeing right now, which is a saber rattling around going to war, to all civil unrest all across the board.
Yep.
So there are a lot of scenarios up there that they're they're going to do their best to detract the attention of Americans from the election at hand and focus in on their own security and their own well-being. And so unfortunately, it doesn't shape up too well from this. But once again, remember, this is all something they're trying to herd everybody into a sheep pen
Yep.
and of behavior, and we can't allow them to do it.
Well, it brings in the question of, okay, we've got now 10 plus 15 million, 10 to 15 million illegals in here who
Yeah.
mostly are being paid by the government, right? At this point, they've got these debit cards
Yep.
and their food is paid for, their shelter is paid for, and you have them being distributed into basically every major city in this country. It's not going to take much. Just turn off that income, turn off the money spigot, then those
Yeah.
people are going to cause havoc in all these cities. And then we will be distracted. We will be fighting that rather than worrying about what's going on in the political scene.
Right. It's all about distraction
Yep.
and creating chaos wherever you possibly can. And so you know, law and order. The Republican Party in general is about law and order. We're typically the favorites of the law enforcement community because we are in favor of law and order. The other side is complete anarchists. I mean, that's what Antifa is. That's their thugs. It's just like Hitler used the brown shirts back in
Yep.
his era
Yep.
to come to power. That's what they use these organizations, them and Patriot Front Group, all these little paramilitary groups that are just called out to stir things up.
It's going to be an interesting summer. I mean, the year is just getting started here, and we're already seeing a lot of disclosure, which was last year we had a lot. We have a little bit more this year, and I think we're going to start moving beyond disclosure. And the next phase of that is, well, there'll be anger, but there'll be retribution as well. I think we're going to move into that before year end here. What do you think?
Well, I'd like to get beyond the fact that we're finding folks guilty of violating the law and have some consequences and
Correct.
fit some people for orange jumpsuits.
Yep.
Um, and I think we're getting smarter about the strategies for that. So I guess maybe that's more hope than practical understanding where we're headed. But that's really what I want to start seeing. I want to start seeing some prosecutions in that. And I
Yes.
think one of the areas where we're going to start seeing justice pop up, and you've seen this, is around Trump's Georgia case, where I believe that he's been pushing for it to be televised. This is the one where they're claiming he's guilty of insurrection, and the he wants this to be a public trial, and he's got a lot of evidence to share, and that a lot of people through organizations like that Election Integrity Partnership and the folks out at DHS and CISA who've been censoring access to this data, I think it's going to be a nice little wake up call for a lot of people who've been blue pilled for so long
Yep.
around what happened in an election. And I'm waiting for that inflection moment, that point of inflection where finally people are starting to pull their head out of the ground that was under investigation,
Right.
quote unquote, by the FBI, Catherine Engelbrecht and Greg Phillips for
They
True the
arrested
Vote.
the CEO here in Los Angeles, and then for some reason they just released them.
Yeah, you
Nothing
know why
happened.
they do that? And this is what I've learned is that they do that because then you can't make any inquiries about that because they say, oh no, it's subject to investigation right now. You can't ask those questions. We're in the middle of investigation.
Yeah.
That's the game that's being played. It essentially puts the pause button. But the bottom line is this LA County election system, you're tied into you connect the dots between your statewide voter registration system, your vote tabulation system, your poll worker system, like the Koenig system was deployed, which is called Poll Chief. You're also tying all those systems into your what they call a geographic information system. So in other words, you're opening all that election data up to another community of users that have nothing to do with elections, but they have access to that data store. And so you can imagine, these geographic information systems are things that track your property lines, where all the utilities are. So these are just regular civil servants dealing with title management, that kind of stuff. These are the same folks that now have access into that same election data. And that's where they want to head with all this. So all these systems that are not connected to the internet, no, they're connected to the internet and they're
They have
connected
to
to
be.
each other.
Yeah.
And there is no firewall, no compartmentalization at all. We got to go back to hand counts and we got to go back to single day voting. There's some serious things we need to go off and do. And one of the things you were talking about leading into the summer, one of the things that has been part of that saber rattling that people are concerned about is the idea of a cyber attack. Now, if there is a cyber attack, and let's say it's targeting the voting systems, well, first of all, it highlights that these systems are connected to the internet because that's how you get subject to a cyber attack. But also, that's the reason why we're promoting the idea of these hand counts, because now we got a backup. There's no excuse for not conducting an election. There's no excuse for giving Joe Biden the keys to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue for one more day. We can hold a hand count. And before Common Core math, we used to be able to do counting pretty well in America.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's what that may actually be a catalyst for the hand counts, which is long overdue in my estimation.
Well, we didn't need the computers back then. We don't need them now. I mean, the problem is we've lost the trust in the public as well. I talk to people here all the time. It's like, why vote? Doesn't matter. They're going to flip it anyway. And then when we heard
Yeah.
that, in Mike Lindell's event, we heard that at the end of everything, there's basically an Excel spreadsheet that these machines spit out, and you could change the number on that Excel spreadsheet, the final tally, and there's no way to go back and verify where that number came from.
So yeah, the way I explain it all the time is that I was a poll challenger. I was a certified Microsoft Small Business Specialist. No matter
Hmm.
how closely I watched those machines tabulate the vote, I was never going to actually be able to go in and witness the individual electron flipping the bits and bytes inside that Ethernet cable, uh, transferring from point A to point B
Yep.
in that server. I could not go into that motherboard and chipset and actually follow those votes because it was happening inside the machine. And you recall what happens anytime somebody wanted to peek at the logs for those machines and see what they were actually doing. All of a sudden, they were the ones who were being investigated.
Yep.
And
They flipped the script.
it's right. So exactly, this is a case where the Wizard of Oz is behind his curtain, and he doesn't want you taking a peek, no matter how hard Frodo's pulling at that curtain to expose him here. They don't want you to find out what's going on underneath the hood. So the way to get around that is with transparency. And frankly, if we're looking at one silver bullet for how to restore trust in the elections, it's transparency.
Yep.
It's conducting full forensic audits after every election and let them and force them to prove that the election was conducted in a lawful manner. And right now, somehow they've got and say, no, 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 you got to prove that there was fraud. And meanwhile, we're going to go off and destroy all the records that you would need to and prevent access to all the records you would need to prove that. No, no, no. We need to flip the script like they did essentially in Wayne County. I don't know if you remember this, but the Wayne County Board of Canvassers, where I am back in 2020, refused to certify the Wayne County election.
Hmm.
We had 71% of the AV County Board, AV County boards in the city of Detroit that did not reconcile. They were unbalanced, which means that the number of ballots issued per the poll book did not equal the number of ballots in the containers.
Yeah.
Right. So they said, forget this. We're not going to, this is not 1%. This is 71%. Granted, it was an improvement over the primary, which was 72%, but still, it's a big deal. And you know what? They never did officially certify that. At the big, I actually issued a FOIA request for the official certification paperwork for Wayne County, and it did not have the requisite signatures from those canvassers. They were strong-armed in the middle to issue a conditional vote and said, as long as you conduct an audit, we'll do it. They never conducted the audit, so they never signed the certification paperwork. If you take out the Wayne County votes in the 2020 election, all of a sudden, those 16 electors for Michigan, they don't go to Joe Biden, they go to Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And so the rule of law used to matter. I think we're more prepared going into this one, but yeah, that's some of the examples of some of the games that are being played around.
Let me
that we
ask
have to
you
look for.
something Sidney Powell brought up back in 2020 about our election tabulation going overseas to Frankfurt, Germany.
Yeah.
Any truth to that, or is that we could prove?
Well, I personally have issued FOIA requests for the election night reporting in particular. And this is the Collier brothers. It highlights, and one of the quotes from that book is that the most mysterious aspect of our elections is the actual tallying of the votes themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I can watch as a poll challenger the act of issuing a ballot to somebody and seeing whether or not they're in the poll book and all that kind of stuff. What happens with the election night reporting is a complete mystery. And then here's some of what I've been able to piece together, though. Sydney's right. This stuff is going overseas. In Michigan, we know that one of the election night reporting services, known as CITL, is actually a Barcelona, Spain company. And I know that they are active in providing under the brand name Clarity Systems, because CITL got exposed for who they are, so they have to rebrand under Clarity Systems. These guys have access to our election night data that you and me, Joe Q Public,
we don't have access to it. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
but they do. And so I know for a fact this is a Barcelona, Spain company that had access to it. Furthermore, and this is something a lot of people don't realize. You know that same organization, the Election Integrity Partnership, that's active with the censorship? Well, guess what? They feature an organization called the Center for Internet Security. And this same organization deploys what they call Albert sensors to secure all these election networks from any malware. And these Albert sensors are deployed in all 50 states, usually at the county level and at the state level, all across those 50 states. And these Albert sensors are essentially supposed to be internet gatekeepers. So for these systems that are not connected to the internet, they provide an internet gatekeeper to make sure that they're secure, right? And with an organization called the Center for Internet Security, that our Department of Homeland Security, the same people that says the most secure election in American history,
CISA, yeah.
they paid Center for Internet Security over $27 million a year to deploy these Albert sensors free of charge out to these folks. And what these sensors do is they actually funnel that data back up to the data center managed by the Center for Internet Security, where they are allowed, per the agreements that I've issued FOIA requests on, to look at the decrypted data. So here we have one organization funneling data on election night, and all of our poll book data, all of our voter registration data, all that data is coming up to a central source that can go off and look at what's happening in all the battleground states. And maybe they can go off and put out a text to some key actors and say, you know what, I think we need to shut down all counting across all the battleground states, maybe at the same time, because Florida didn't go our way. The Center for Internet Security, the same organization behind the Election Integrity Partnership misinformation reporting tool, as discovered by the United States Congress under Jim Jordan, that same organization has access to all that data, and it's staffed by a bunch of former Intel people. You know, the same laptop is a Russian disinformation.
You're making me feel less confident that we're going to be able to break through all of this. It's just like there's so many layers of it all. My gosh. Every time you turn, there's another layer.
There is a lot of layers, and we haven't even gotten into the funding layer, which is a big part of it, and all these NGOs that are acting with impunity. I mean, but it does. Here's the part that it's been tough time to go off and highlight a strategy that zeroes in on what is that kerplunk stick that will restore our confidence in the election. And it still comes down to to that one word of transparency, which ties into the idea that we're an information war, right? These NGOs like CTCL and CEIR and Center for Internet Security, they all these NGOs, they have one thing in common. They are not subject to Freedom of Information Act requests, yet more and more of our election processes are being outsourced to these companies. So
they know it's cover.
Right. So so all we have to do is start asking for methods of counting our vote, et cetera, that don't require third parties, because they're simple. We used to know how to count. Let's go off and do hand count. And then we don't need zeroed in on right after the 2020 election, because I'm a geek and I'm an engineer and I said we should never have decimal places when it comes to issuing vote tallies.
Right. And it's a whole number. It's not a fractional number.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when you look at the Edison research feed to media organizations like the New York Times, what you'll notice is that they are, instead of pushing out integer values for the number of votes, which means there's no decimal point in or anything like that, instead of pushing out integer values, all of a sudden they're issuing a total number of votes and then a percentage out to 3 significant figures for each of the candidates. Now, just so you know, just the rounding error on that alone is enough to call an election into question, right? Mm-hmm. So if you got 3 sig figs and you got 5 million people casting a vote that could be plus or minus 10,000 votes in a state like Michigan that was decided by 10,727 votes back in 2016. So that one thing that you're talking about in the fractional votes, it's obvious that there's some game being played. Now, how did Edison Research get that data? That's the data trail that I've been trying to walk back and understand exactly where are they getting their data. Now, they say that they're getting it from exit polls. I don't know about you. I've never seen an exit poll, and I've been pretty close to politics for the last 8 years, or actually now 12 years of my life. Never seen an exit poll. They could use stringers, where they have somebody go in and make a phone call and say, hey, can you give us a vote tally? Or, and I think this is more likely circumstance, they list another option is that they tap into the electronic voting systems, and they actually get the data real time. And if they're pulling the data, what prevents them from pushing the data? Yeah. And so
you had your election.
I want to find out where they flip. Right. I want to find out where they have the algorithmic flip from an integer-based vote tally to a decimal-based vote tally. Where does that actually happen? Wow. And I have not been able to find that out yet. So to all your listeners that are very astute, that can dig into that kind of stuff, for me, that's my kerplunk stick question when it comes to the technical side of what's going on in our elections. Where does the conversion from integer-based voting to decimal-based voting occur? And I think when you find that, you're going to start finding out where the controller for the election outcomes
Right.
may be embedded. And I don't know if I've talked to you about this before, but and when we talk about controllers, there actually is a piece of evidence that indicates that there are people interested in using what are called PID controllers in the elections. And PID controller is a techie term for a specific type of controller that when you look at those results coming from Edison Research, for example, to all the media companies, one thing very weird happened on election night. The cumulative vote tallies across all 50 states would go up and up and up and up. And then at some point in the night, in Michigan, it was 5 o'clock in the morning. In other states, it varies. That cumulative vote tally went down to 0 and then popped back up again and reserved a different slope on the vote tallies allocated to different people. Now, my background's engineering, right? I've designed control systems. I know some control system engineers, and they were looking at that and they said, you know what? That looks a lot like what happens when you adjust the set point on a PID controller. That's exactly the behavior on that controlled variable.
Oh, wow.
What happens? And you know what? In 2010, there was an IEEE conference in a place you probably never heard of called Wuhan, China. And at that, there was a paper presented on how to control election outcomes and how to optimize election outcomes using a PID controller. So, I'm not making any of this stuff up. You can go verify. Yeah, 2010. They've been planning this for a long time, and it indicates that that would seem to explain why you'd have decimal-based votes instead of integer-based, because there actually was a controller modifying the election results and tweaking the actual values. So
it's more than just an algorithm. Then there's actually a central point where this data is coming in, it's being fixed, and then resent back.
Potentially, we don't know. I mean, because these are all NGOs that we're dealing with. I can't peek under the hood of an NGO, but I'll tell you, looking outside the black box, I see integer votes coming in and I see decimal votes coming out. Something interesting is happening on the inside there. And it could be an open loop control system. It could be a closed loop control system, whatever the case may be. There's something funky going on there. And I just call for people to do more investigation on that. And if we can find out where that flip, but to your point around the fractional voting, when you can find out where that flip actually happens from integers to fractions, I think we're going to get to the heart of where the machine-based election modifications are happening.
So honestly, it didn't make any difference at TCF when they were blocking out the windows and kicking the Republican poll watchers out. They're not going to see what's going on anyway.
Well, I would submit, I wrote about this. I actually wrote a book on this called The 2020 Coup. If you want, you can go out to mystore.com and use the promo code Meddling Kids. But in that, I highlight it was a 2000 Mule style fraud where you had ballot factories going off and injecting ballots to kind of, precede the election, if you will.
Yeah.
The 10% came in with the machines because they didn't predict the voter turnout accurately and they had to do an oopsies. And it's much more easy to detect what happens when you change the vote tally directly, because now you got to sync it up with the number of ballots that you have, and then you got to sync it up with what the poll books are saying, which is why Detroit being out of sync by 71% is such a big deal.
Yeah, massive.
Yeah.
Interesting. So that explained that, partly explained that bump that we saw for Biden at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I was there seeing the 3:30
the drops.
Injection of the ballots, coming in the system in the back door with zero chain of custody, which means we have no idea where those ballots came from.
And we know some of them were computer printed, some of them were filled out by a computer. They were, they were not folded as if they would have been if they were mailed, right?
Yeah.
And the mail-in balloting, where do they get all the ballots from when they're doing the ballot harvesting? Like if you were looking at 2000 Mules, I think he misnamed that movie. It should have been 2000 Mules, Zero Arrests, but that's just me, right?
Yeah. Well, we were hoping for arrests in the wake of that movie, so
we saw none.
I didn't think they wanted to call that out.
No, they did arrest one lady. They got one, whatever, but 1 out of 2000, we got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, and that kind of summarizes the task ahead for 2024. We got a lot of work to do.
Yeah. So
if you want to find out what work we're working on, just please go to lindellplan.com. And if you can help out Mike, because literally all of his chips are already on the table. If you want to help out and help secure the elections, please go there and and contribute.
Yeah, we're going to push that out. LindellPlan.com. We've been talking about that. It's real important because he's got a lot of skin in the game, and certainly we need to support him because, people talk about, oh well, Donald Trump will come back in and he'll save everyone. I was like, how's he going to do that without us behind him? You know what I mean? And a lot of people are just sitting on their hands and waiting for that day. And that's why I say it's really a scary proposition to have all your chips on the table and expect that election day in November we're going to win. Well, what if we don't win?
Yeah.
You've lost all your chips.
And as somebody who's been a candidate multiple times, right? I mean, there's nothing more frustrating than knowing you're going into a game that's rigged.
Yeah.
And so one last point, I think, because we're getting close to wrapping up on it, I wanted to highlight, you had said it even during this broadcast, is that, oh, you're not giving me much hope for what's going on in 2024. Guys, the only reason we discovered what they did in 2020 is because everybody overwhelmed them at the polls. The fact that they had to go to their backup plan with the machine-based manipulation, popularity tanking, and no matter what they do at this point in time, they're going to have to get desperate. And so don't give up. Don't be discouraged. Get out and vote. Overwhelm them at the polls. We've got better monitoring of what is going on than we've ever had before, and it's going to be very difficult for them to hide their malfeasance this time around.
Yeah, certainly. What do you think about the idea that Biden will not be the candidate on the Democratic side? That they're gonna replace him at the DNC convention?
They need to do something, right?
Yeah.
Because he is on a let's say a reentry, use an aerospace term, a reentry trajectory that's going to have him burn up on landing. So it's so they're going to do something, and desperate times call for desperate measures. And I know they're talking about Michelle Obama as
Michelle Obama's what's in the news, with also Gavin Newsom. So we don't know which way they'll go with it, but they have options.
No, you can keep Gavin Newsom. You don't have to share him. You don't have to share him. You can have Gretchen Whitmer if you'd like. We got her out, and
oh boy,
she's rumored to be running for president as well, by the way.
Yeah, well, they're not letting any other candidates in the Democratic primary, which is really interesting.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. would have been a very compelling alternative. Now he's running as an independent, obviously, but
they wouldn't let him in.
And pretty much all elections all the time since that point in time. And I go beyond actually putting my opinion out there and actually provide the evidence in support of that opinion, so you guys can take a look out there. That's where you can find out where to get access to my book, The 2020 Coup, as well.
So it's letsfixstuff.org. I'm just writing it down here so we can put it up. There we go. Letsfixstuff.org.
That's it. You got it.
There you go. That's where you want to go, friends. You want to find out more about Patrick and what he's up to. And boy, there's a lot here. We're going to have you back, Patrick. We've got a lot of conversation here, and there's a lot to unpack. And certainly I'm really excited for you that you're working with Mike Lindell. LindellPlan.com is the place you want to go for that. And, we need these little pockets of power, if you will, to push back, because we weren't prepared. I think by 2016, we were okay. Everything was fine. And then 2020, we were not prepared for that. And we're sort of understanding it more and more, like you say, and we're getting to the point where we can peel back the onion now and figure out what they did. It's going to be harder for them in 24. Doesn't mean they're not going to try. They certainly will. They already are.
Yeah.
We had a friend send us primary ballots from Nevada yesterday, and Donald Trump's name's not on them.
Yeah, that's one way to. But he's actually one person that could win in a runaway with a write-in ballot campaign.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the good news on our front. Guys, just keep hope. That one of the tools that they're using in this influence op, or this information war, is that they want you to be depressed. They want you to be discouraged. They want to keep you at home and not being engaged. And I'll tell you, if we do that this election,
it's over.
Well, we deserve the results.
Yeah, it's over.
This is it. This is for all the marbles, folks. And I just hope that you're inspired to not just go out and vote yourself, but to get all your friends and family, your members of your church, out to your members of your work, out to get out and vote. Because I'm tired of Bidenomics. I'm tired of the lies. I'm tired of the corruption in our justice system. And the only way we're going to do that is a change of leadership. And I wholeheartedly encourage you to get out and vote and make sure we make that change official.
Yeah, the biggest mistake we can make is not voting, right? That's the biggest mistake.
Absolutely.
So, and they want to scare us off.
Exactly. This one here, we're not going to listen to them this time, and we're just going to get out and vote and make sure that we regain control of our country.
Yep, absolutely. Awesome, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Great being with you,
And we're
Robert.
going to have you back because I want to have Lewis on here too, because he's going to have a lot of poignant questions for you. So we'll bring you back in a few weeks and we'll have another deeper conversation because you've got a lot of content and certainly someone who's got their hands wet, if you will, into all of this is really important to share this information. You know, more of us talking about it, we're going to change it. If we worry about censorship and worry about, hey, we're not going to talk about it because people are not going to like us, screw all that. You know, we've
Yeah,
come too far now.
I agree. I'm done substituting the word Dominion with Domino's and ballots with pizza. I'm just tired of talking in code on it to get past the YouTube censorship algorithms on it, guys. Now we need to be bold. We need to get out there and spread the word. Literally, if there's one thing that should give you hope, it's the fact that despite the media pitching the narrative that it was the most secure election in American history back in 2020, ad nauseum, 62% of Americans each other. And that's a good thing, whether we're talking election fraud or not. Get out there and talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends and family, talk to your parishioners, and just get the word out to everybody about what is going on in our country.
I've completely stopped worrying about bringing up politics at any conversations. I meet strangers
Yeah.
on the street and I start talking to them about it and find out where they are. And you know what? 9 times out of 10, they understand. They know what's going
Yeah.
on. So,
Especially if you hit them at the grocery store.
yeah, at the grocery store, the restaurant, the gas station,
Yeah.
anywhere, yeah, no question.
Yeah, that McDonald's meal now that costs as much as a nice steak dinner used to cost beforehand.
How true. How true.
Yeah.
Patrick, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
God bless you and knock 'em alive, my friend.
All right. Thank you, everyone. God bless you too.